This just in, our first look at Charlie Kirk's accused killer since his arrest. Tyler Robinson appears in Utah court via Zoom from jail.
Roommate, why? Robinson, why did I do it? Roommate, yeah. Robinson, I had enough of his hatred. Some hate can't be negotiated out.
And just wait until you see the text messages that we now have that Robinson allegedly sent his lover roommate after the shooting and what he allegedly told that roommate to do that led to even more charges against this accused killer, a killer who could be put to death if he's found guilty of the charges he now faces. We're on the case, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. All right, let's get to the updates that we have in the case of Tyler Robinson, who is now charged with killing Charlie Kirk, the conservative influencer. And these text messages that we now have, I just read through them, they will be damning pieces of evidence in Tyler Robinson's case. I mean, if this ever even goes to trial. Now, take a look here. Here's Robinson appearing in Utah County, Utah court just a short time ago, appearing via video call from jail. He's now being held without bond. Now, we also now know the charges that Robinson is facing. 7 counts in all, and they could mean that he will be put to death if he's found guilty in a jury trial. Prosecutors in Utah County announced them today for the first time at a news conference.
Count 1, aggravated murder, a capital offense for intentionally or knowingly causing the death of Charlie Kirk under circumstances that created a great risk of death to others. Count 2, felony discharge of a firearm causing serious bodily injury, a first-degree felony. The state is further alleging aggravating factors on counts 1 and 2 because the defendant is believed to have targeted Charlie Kirk based on Charlie Kirk's political expression and did so knowing that children were present and would witness the homicide. The state is also charging defendant with count 3, obstruction of justice, a second-degree felony for moving and concealing the rifle used in the shooting. Count 4, obstruction of justice, a second-degree felony for disposing the clothing he wore during the shooting. Count 5, witness tampering, a third-degree felony for directing his roommate to delete his incriminating texts. Count 6, witness tampering, a third-degree felony for directing his roommate to stay silent if police questioned him. And count 7, commission of a violent offense in the presence of a child, a Class A misdemeanor, for committing homicide knowing that children were present and may have seen or heard the murder and did so based on Charlie Kirk's political expression.
Charlie Kirk, of course, was a political figure. Thousands of people came to hear him speak at Utah Valley University. He was one of the leading voices of young conservatives in this country. But that's not the only reason that there was major suspicion that this was an alleged political assassination. We know that Robinson, once he was arrested, had become more political in recent years, according to his family. We saw in the bullets left by the rifle that he allegedly left behind lines like, "Hey, fascist, catch," that politics may have been the motivation for killing Charlie Kirk. But today, for the first time, prosecutors made that known, as you heard there, because of some of the text messages we're going to talk about and some of the statements that Robinson had made over the last couple of years. Now, another major update coming in was related to Robinson's roommate, and this is where we get into these text messages. Now, that roommate's been identified as a member of the transgender community, a man who's transitioning to be a woman, and they had been in a relationship with Robinson. Robinson is facing 2 counts of obstruction of justice for allegedly trying to stop that roommate from speaking to law enforcement and for allegedly telling the roommate to delete messages about the shooting. Now, I want to be clear that law enforcement has said that this roommate has been very cooperative in the investigation and they are not facing charges at this time. Prosecutors, though, just unveiled the bombshell text messages that Tyler Robinson allegedly sent that roommate. Take a listen.
Police interviewed Robinson's roommate a biological male who was involved in a romantic relationship with Robinson. The roommate told police that the roommate received messages from Robinson about the shooting, and he did provide those messages to police. On September 10th, 2025, the roommate received a text message from Robinson which said, "Drop what you're doing, look under my keyboard." The roommate looked under the keyboard and found a note that stated, quote, "I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it." Police found a photograph of this note. The following text exchange, then took place. After reading the note, the roommate responded, "What? You're joking, right?" Robinson, "I am still okay, my love, but I'm stuck in Orem for a little while longer yet. Shouldn't be long until I can come home, but I gotta grab my rifle still. To be honest, I had hoped to keep this secret till I died of old age. I am sorry to involve you." Roommate, "You weren't the one who did it, right?" Robinson, I am. I'm sorry." Roommate, "I thought they caught the person." Robinson, "No, they grabbed some crazy old dude, then interrogated someone in similar clothing. I had planned to grab my rifle from my drop point shortly after, but most of that side of town got locked down. It's quiet, almost enough to get out, but there's one vehicle lingering."
Before we get back to this episode of On the Case, I need to take a moment and stop and talk about our partners at Morgan & Morgan. This is America's largest law firm. They have more than 1,000 attorneys and they win a lot. They've recovered over $25 billion for more than 500,000 clients. And in the past few months, a client in Florida received $12 million after the insurance company offered just $350,000. In Pennsylvania, a client was awarded $26 million. That's 40 times the insurer's $650,000 offer. And another client in Pennsylvania received $29 million after being offered only $500,000. Now, even if you don't think your case is worth millions of dollars, why not fight for what you deserve? Morgan & Morgan makes it so easy to start a claim. You can do it with just 8 easy clicks on your phone. So if you've been hurt and you need to start a claim, go to www.forthepeople.com/OTC. You can also scan this QR code on the screen or click the link below.
Roommate, "Why?" Robinson, "Why did I do it?" Roommate, "Yeah." Robinson, "I had enough of his hatred. Some hate can't be negotiated out. If I am able to grab my rifle unseen, I will have left no evidence. Going to attempt to retrieve it again. Hopefully they have moved on. I haven't seen anything about them finding it." Roommate, "How long have you been planning this?" Robinson, "A bit over a week, I believe. I can get close to it, but there is a squad car parked right by it. I think they already swept that spot, but I don't want to chance it." Robinson again, "I'm wishing I had circled back and grabbed it as soon as I got to my vehicle. I'm worried what my old man would do if I didn't bring back Grandpa's rifle. IDEK if it's had a serial number, but it wouldn't trace to me. I worry about prints. I had to leave it in a bush where I changed outfits. Didn't have the ability or time to bring it with. I might have to abandon it and hope they don't find prints. How the F will I explain losing it to my old man? Only thing I left was the rifle wrapped in a towel. Remember how I was engraving bullets? The F in messages are mostly a big meme. If I see notice bulge UWU on Fox News, I might have a stroke all right. I'm going to have to leave it. That really effing sucks. Judging from today, I'd say Grandpa's gun does just fine, IDK. I think that was a $2K scope. Wink, wink.
We know that Robinson was very active on social media, specifically the platform Discord, which is used for video gamers to communicate online. It's being reported by the Washington Post that he actually admitted in a group chat of more than 20 people that he is the one who killed Charlie Kirk. He allegedly said, quote, "I'm surrendering through a sheriff friend in a few moments. Thanks for all the good times and laughs. You've all been so amazing. Thank you for everything." Now, investigators had said that Robinson's dad confronted the 22-year-old about the shooting and eventually confessed to the crime. Robinson surrendered himself to authorities after he spoke with his parents and a family friend. His mom, we found out today, was originally the person who sounded the alarm when she saw photos on the news of that person of interest, and she thought that person of interest looked like her son.
On September 11th, 2025, the day after the shooting, Robinson's mother saw the photo of the shooter in the news and thought the shooter looked like her son. Robinson's mother called her son and asked him where he was. He said he was at home sick and that he had also been at home homesick on September 10th. Robinson's mother expressed concern to her husband that the suspect shooter looked like Robinson. Robinson's father agreed. Robinson's mother explained that over the last year or so, Robinson had become more political and had started to lean more to the left, becoming more pro-gay and trans rights oriented. She stated that Robinson began to date his roommate, a biological male who was transitioning genders. This resulted in several discussions with family members, but especially between Robinson and his father, who have very different political views. In one conversation before the shooting, Robinson mentioned that Charlie Kirk would be holding an event at UVU, which Robinson said was a stupid venue for the event. Robinson accused Kirk of spreading hate. Robinson's father reported that when his wife showed him the surveillance image of the suspected shooter in the news, he agreed that it looked like their son. He also believed that the rifle that police suspected the shooter used matched a rifle that was given to his son as a gift. As a result, Robinson's father contacted his son and asked him to send a photo of the rifle. Robinson did not respond. However, Robinson's father spoke on the phone with Robinson. Robinson implied that he planned to take his own life. Robinson's parents were able to convince him to meet at their home. As they discussed the situation, Robinson implied that he was the shooter and stated that he couldn't go to jail and just wanted to end it. When asked why he did it, Robinson explained there is too much evil and the guy, referring to Charlie Kirk, spreads too much hate. They talked about Robinson turning himself in and convinced Robinson to speak with a family friend who is a retired deputy sheriff. At Robinson's father's request, the family friend met with Robinson and his parents and convinced Robinson to turn himself in.
Robinson was in court today on Tuesday. He is being held without bond. Now, you've heard from President Trump and Utah Governor Spencer Cox over the last several days that they say this is going to be a death penalty case. And today that was confirmed by Utah prosecutors filing that they will go for the death penalty. And you also heard them lay out what they believe are the aggravating factors that could lead to the death penalty if there's a guilty verdict in this case. Joining us now is former federal prosecutor and the president of the West Coast Trial Lawyers, Nima Romani. Thank you, as always, for taking time to be with us here on Law and Crime. As we just minutes ago learned of these charges at the time we're recording this, 7 counts that Tyler Robinson is facing. What sticks out to you with what Utah prosecutors are going for here?
Chris, what sticks out to me is that aggravated murder because, of course, it carries the potential death sentence there in Utah. So that's obviously the most serious of the charges. The aggravating factor is that Tyler Robinson shot into a crowd. Obviously, he hit Kirk, but he could have killed anyone. And I think that is what separates that type of murder from other types of murder in this case.
And some of the aggravating factors that the prosecutor talked about, I mean, Charlie Kirk himself was a political figure. We're learning through some of these text messages and Discord messages and what family members have said that Tyler Robinson was very much into his politics and did not like Charlie Kirk, which is alleged, of course, now, but we'll see how the court process plays out. What goes into determining whether he will actually get the death penalty?
So the jurors have to weigh the aggravating factors with the mitigating factors. So obviously the fact that this was plotted, planned, premeditated, that's going to be an aggravating factor. To the extent that this was an assassination in a public place with his wife and children and other children present, that's going to be an aggravating factor. To the extent that this was motivated to silence someone because of their political beliefs, that's going to be an aggravating factor. The defense, of course, is going to try to do everything they can to keep Robinson alive. That is their sole job. It's going to be very hard to get a not guilty or an acquittal in a case like this. There's so much evidence, right? The DNA, those admissions on Discord, we've all seen the surveillance video. So it's really going to be a case not about the guilt phase, but the penalty phase. And in mitigation, I think they're going to talk about the fact that this is someone who's 22 years old. He has no criminal history. He did turn himself in after a day or so. So those are going to be factors in mitigation in this particular case.
And we hear with Tyler Robinson, and there is this big question of, okay, he was into his politics, which was the term that was in the police documents, that he'd become more political in recent years, but he was someone who you could look and say had become radicalized in some way. He was an extremist when it came to his mind, because you would go to the extent of killing someone who you disagree with politically. Why would this not be a terrorism charge?
It potentially is a terrorism charge. So obviously terrorism is unique in that we're talking about the state case, but of course the feds could also file this case, and the easiest way to do so would be to charge terrorism. We've seen the feds file over the state recently in some high-profile cases like Luigi Mangione, Carlos Brown in North Carolina, so I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. Now, in the Mangione case, the judge just dismissed the terrorism charge there in New York in the state case because terrorism requires an intent to either intimidate or coerce the public or the government. Now, I'm not saying that didn't happen here, but in the Mangione case, it seemed like, at least according to the judge, that Mangione did it for his own personal reasons. He didn't put his manifesto out. He didn't share it with anyone. So if someone is radicalized with their own individual beliefs, I believe it's terrorism as a former federal prosecutor, but some judges may not. And that's going to be a key distinction in this case if they do move forward with the terrorism charges. Look, motive is not an element of the crime in the state case. So the prosecution doesn't have to prove why he did it. And again, I'm talking about another case, but that happened to Brian Kohberger, right? Kohberger was convicted of all these murder counts. We still don't really know why he did it. So motive may help the feds. It's not necessary for the state prosecutors.
In talking about the federal charge part of this, because with the FBI involved in this investigation, I mean, clearly Charlie Kirk was someone who's very close to people who worked in federal government, most notably the president. What would go into the decision? Because at this point, if the evidence is as strong as it seems, and you have someone who could be found guilty of a crime that would put them to death, why go through, if the government wanted to get involved, in charging him in federal court as well?
Chris, there's law and there's crime, law and crime, but there's also politics, right? And the practical reality is that there's a political layer over this case. When you have the President of the United States talking about the case, the Attorney General, the Director of the FBI is testifying before Congress today talking about this case, and Jeffrey Epstein and other cases as well. That's not typical. You have the governor of Utah seemingly doing daily press conferences on this case. Again, it's not something that typically happens. So when you have a lot of elected officials interested in a case, and I'm not saying decisions are made for political reasons, but the reality is that there is a political component here. Charlie Kirk was not your ordinary murder victim. That's why I would not be surprised. In fact, I expect to see federal charges here.
And I thought it was interesting, some of the aggravating factors, and they mentioned it twice. You have the 7th county's facing this commission of a violent offense in front of children, and then one of the aggravating factors that they talked about related to the aggravated murder and the felony discharge of a firearm, and that it was done in front of children. I mean, Charlie Kirk, I believe his own kids were actually here, which is horrific to think about, as well as several other young people that were there at this event. But is that just a specific Utah law, or is that one in, I mean, clearly I could see doing an offense in front of a child would be something that deserves punishment, but that was just the first time I had heard specifically that talked about in charges.
Yeah, it's definitely a Utah state-specific law. They certainly wanted to bring in evidence that this was done in front of his wife and kids. I mean, that's something that it's not going to add a whole lot to the sentence, but it can bring more evidence in. And look, we've all seen the videos. They are horrific. They are gut-wrenching. You know, I thought I'd seen it all in my almost 25 years of practice, but it's one of the most gruesome murders that I had seen, and really in a public place with, you know, thousands of people potentially present. So again, an aggravating factor both in terms of the danger to the public, but also the fact that it was committed in front of his wife and kids.
I also think too, where if he was to face federal charges, would that, if he's found guilty, say he's found guilty in Utah for the charges that we're talking about here, but then there's federal charges, would he go into the federal prison system, or would he be a Utah, because I think of a place like the Supermax where you have a lot of high profile inmates, Johar Tsarnaev, the Boston Bombers there, for example. I mean, is that something that potentially could be in the future of Tyler Robinson if found guilty on federal charges?
Potentially, yes, Chris, and I can tell you that he probably wants to serve federal prison time. The reality is federal prisons are a lot nicer than most state prisons. Derek Chauvin, for the murder of George Floyd, chose and asked to serve his time in federal prison. Now, he's also a police officer, and he didn't want to run into some of his former arrestees in state prison. But there's no question that if we're talking about life sentences, most inmates would rather serve federal time than state time because, again, you have less violent criminals. You got a lot more white-collar types as well in federal prison.
And then when it comes to his defense, and I know we were talking about that at the beginning, where it may not be he wasn't the one who did it, but it's just, you know, can you get him a life sentence without the death penalty? What would you need to happen? I know we're in the very early stages today. He's expected to make his first court appearance, but as a defense attorney, what would you need to happen for things to go your way in a trial, considering all the evidence and all the political pressure and anger surrounding this suspect and defendant?
Chris, your number one job as a death penalty qualified lawyer is to keep your client alive. So there's two phases to these murder trials in a death penalty case. There's the guilt phase and there's the penalty phase. It's going to be very tough to defend this case in the guilt phase. So typically in murder cases that we cover here on the Law and Crime, you'll see one of three defenses. It wasn't me. Well, we've all seen the video. His DNA is at the scene. We have his admissions. I didn't intend to do it. It was an accident. Well, again, it was premeditated. We have Discord messages before where he's planning this. It was clearly premeditated. He's using a bolt-action rifle with a scope. And the third was that it was self-defense. I don't think any of those defenses apply. It's very hard to get a diminished capacity or insanity type defense in most states, especially Utah. You really have to show that you don't know right from wrong. By all accounts, Tyler Robinson's a smart kid. Did well on his ACTs, was an engineering major. So I think if you're the defense here, Chris, you really got to plead guilty during the guilt phase, or don't put up much of a defense, and focus your attention on the penalty phase. We saw this strategy work with some success with Nicholas Cruz, the Parkland school shooter, right? The defense just focused all their attention to save his life, and ultimately they were successful because you have to get 12 out of 12 jurors. It's very hard to get a death sentence, especially for someone who's younger. I'm not saying you can't get there if you're the prosecution, but it's not a foregone conclusion like a guilty verdict is. So I think the defense will lean into some of the mitigating factors that we talked about. And look, the reality is that he comes from a good Mormon family, reportedly. There's a lot of Mormon jurors in Utah. I'm not saying people are going to make decisions based on religious reasons, but some people may have a tough time putting this kid to death, and you only need 1 out of 12 jurors if you're the defense. The other thing we'll probably see them do is the Koberger strategy, is litigate everything. File every motion you can, not because you think that you actually have a chance of success, but to create appellate issues because we know that it's much easier and more likely to get a death sentence reversed on appeal, because there's mandatory state and federal appeals, than actually convincing a death penalty qualified jury not to return a death sentence.
Yeah, fascinating. I mean, we'll see how this plays out. I mean, certainly now we have the 7 counts that he's facing, and we'll see how the court case of what has been a very political story, how that now plays out. Nima Rahmani, it's always great to have you on Law and Crime. Thanks for being with us.
Of course, Chris. Thanks for having me. Talk soon.
That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law and Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.